My name is Alexandra Martinez, and last Christmas Eve, while my family whispered about my unemployment problem over dinner at the Grandview Country Club, my sister's CEO stood up and announced to the entire dining room that I owned the logistics company that had just saved his corporation $12 million. What they didn't know was that for 18 months, I had been quietly building a supply chain empire while they assumed I was just another failed graduate living off savings. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The sterling silver cutlery clinked against bone china as my extended family settled into their annual Christmas Eve tradition at the Grandview Country Club, an establishment that had hosted the Martinez family gathering for the past 15 years. The dining room overlooked snow-covered golf courses through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the soft glow of crystal chandeliers cast everything in the warm light that expensive venues specialize in creating. I adjusted the simple black dress I had chosen specifically to blend into the background and took my assigned seat at the far end of the mahogany table, the positioning that had become customary for family members whose life choices required diplomatic handling. My parents had developed an art form around seating arrangements that minimized potential sources of uncomfortable conversation while maintaining the appearance of family unity. The conversation flowed predictably through the usual topics that occupied successful people during holiday gatherings. My sister Carmen discussed her promotion to Senior Vice President of Operations at Meridian Global Solutions, her voice carrying the confident tone of someone whose career trajectory had never deviated from predetermined expectations. My cousin David described his recent partnership track advancement at his law firm, while his wife Rebecca detailed their latest real estate acquisition in the exclusive Hillcrest neighborhood. My uncle Robert, who had built a regional accounting practice over 3 decades, held court at the head of the table with stories about his firm's expansion into cryptocurrency consulting. My aunt Patricia contributed updates about her interior design business and the high-profile clients who sought her expertise for their luxury residences. The conversation created a symphony of professional achievement and financial success that had become the soundtrack to our family gathering. I maintained my practiced expression of polite interest while observing the familiar dynamics that had shaped these gatherings throughout my adult life. There was an unspoken hierarchy that determined speaking order, conversation topics, and the level of attention accorded to different family members based on their perceived professional status and financial achievement. As the appetizer course was served, my mother attempted to redirect attention toward me with the well-intentioned but ultimately uncomfortable question that had become her signature approach to managing awkward family dynamics. "Alexandra has been taking some time to explore her options," she announced to the table with the determined cheerfulness of someone who had rehearsed this explanation. "It's important to find the right fit rather than rushing into something that isn't quite right." The statement hung in the air with the weight of diplomatic language that everyone understood but nobody directly challenged. My cousin David offered a sympathetic nod that conveyed both support and pity. "The job market has been challenging lately," he said with the authority of someone who had never personally experienced job market challenges. "Sometimes it takes time to find opportunities that match your qualification." Rebecca joined the conversation with enthusiasm that barely concealed her curiosity about my financial situation. "Have you been networking through your business school alumni association? David's firm has had good success recruiting through those channels." Her tone suggested genuine helpfulness while simultaneously establishing that my unemployment was a problem that could be solved through proper application of conventional career development strategy. My sister Carmen, who had always occupied the role of family success story, attempted to bridge the conversation toward safer territory. "Alexandra has always been good at analyzing complex situations," she said with the diplomatic tone she used in corporate settings. "I'm sure she'll find something that makes good use of her analytical skills when the right opportunity comes along." The conversation contained layers of meaning that reflected 18 months of family gatherings, where my professional status had become an increasingly uncomfortable topic. Everyone genuinely cared about my welfare and wanted to be supportive, but nobody quite knew how to discuss unemployment in a family where career success was the primary measure of personal achievement. My uncle Robert, whose business acumen had earned him the role of informal family career counselor, leaned forward with the expression he used when dispensing professional advice. "Alexandra, have you considered consulting work? Many companies are looking for project-based expertise, and it could be a good way to build relationships while you're exploring permanent opportunity. The suggestion was offered with genuine thoughtfulness, but it carried the underlying assumption that I needed guidance in basic career development strategies. My aunt Patricia added her own perspective with similar intentions. Or maybe something in logistics coordination. You were always so organized, even as a child. Sometimes our natural talents point us toward opportunities we haven't considered. The irony of her suggestion was so profound that I had to focus on maintaining my composed expression. The family member who they viewed as needing career guidance was receiving advice to pursue exactly the field where I had already achieved significant success, though none of them were aware of this achievement. As the conversation continued, I found myself in the surreal position of listening to well-meaning family members discuss my career prospects, while remaining unaware that I had spent the previous 18 months building something that none of them would have believed possible if I had attempted to explain it. The disconnect between their perception and reality had become so complete that bridging it seemed almost impossible without appearing to make claims that would strain credibility. My cousin Maria, who had recently completed her MBA and was working in management consulting, offered her perspective with the confidence of someone who had just learned current business school theories. The key is positioning yourself for opportunities in growth sectors, she explained. Supply chain and logistics are actually really hot right now, because of all the disruption from global shipping issues. The comment struck me as particularly amusing because Maria was unknowingly describing exactly the market conditions that had enabled my company to achieve rapid growth and profitability. While she was learning about supply chain disruption in case study format, I had been building solutions to address those exact disruptions for clients who were paying premium rates for expertise that could solve real-world problems. My father, who had always maintained a quietly supportive approach to family dynamics, attempted to shift the conversation toward more general topics. The important thing is that everyone is healthy and together for the holidays, he said with the diplomatic tone he used to diffuse potentially uncomfortable situations. Career paths aren't always linear, and sometimes the most interesting opportunities come from unexpected directions. His comment contained wisdom that was more accurate than he realized, though he had no way of knowing how precisely his observation applied to my situation. The unexpected direction my career had taken was not visible to anyone at the table, despite being the most significant professional development in our family's recent history. As the main course was served, the conversation naturally evolved toward discussion of holiday plans, travel arrangements, and family updates that provided safer territory for inclusive discussion. Carmen described her upcoming business trip to oversee a major operational restructuring that her company was implementing to address supply chain challenges that had been creating cost overruns and delivery delays. The irony continued to compound as she detailed problems that were remarkably similar to challenges I had been solving for multiple clients over the past year. Her company was struggling with vendor coordination, inventory management, and transportation optimization issues that represented exactly the type of systematic inefficiencies that my business specialized in addressing. We're bringing in external consultants to help design better processes, Carmen explained. The current system is costing us millions in inefficiencies, but internal teams haven't been able to identify the root causes or develop comprehensive solutions. My uncle Robert nodded with understanding born of similar business challenges. Supply chain optimization has become incredibly complex, he agreed. Most companies need specialized expertise to navigate all the variables effectively. The conversation was taking place around me while addressing exactly the professional domain where I had established expertise and achieved measurable success. The disconnect between their perception of my capabilities and the reality of my professional accomplishments had become so pronounced that I felt like I was observing the discussion from an alternate dimension. My mother, ever vigilant about including me in family conversations, turned toward me with an expression of hopeful encouragement. This sounds like something you might find interesting, Alexandra. Maybe Carmen could provide some insights about opportunities in her industry. The suggestion was offered with genuine love and support, but it reflected the assumption that I needed assistance in identifying potential career directions, rather than recognition that I might already possess relevant expertise. Carmen nodded enthusiastically at the possibility of providing career guidance to her younger sister. "I'd be happy to share what I know about supply chain management," Carmen said with the generous tone of someone offering to help a family member navigate unfamiliar territory. "It's actually a fascinating field with lots of opportunities for analytical people who can understand complex systems." The offer was made with such sincere helpfulness that declining it would have appeared ungrateful, despite the fact that accepting career advice about my own field of expertise created an almost absurd situation. I managed to express appropriate appreciation while maintaining the diplomatic balance that family gatherings required. As the evening progressed, I found myself reflecting on the strange dynamics that had developed around my professional situation. The family members who cared about me most had constructed a narrative about my career status that was so divorced from reality that correcting it would require explanations that might appear to be fabrications or exaggeration. The fundamental challenge was that the success I had achieved operated in a domain that was invisible to traditional measures of professional accomplishment. I had no corporate title, office building, or formal organizational structure that would be immediately recognizable as markers of business success. My company existed as a network of relationships, systems, and processes that generated significant revenue, while maintaining operational flexibility that conventional businesses could not match. The dining room around us represented a particular definition of professional success that emphasized formal structures, institutional affiliations, and visible symbols of achievement. My approach to building a business had deliberately avoided many of these conventional markers in favor of operational effectiveness and financial performance. But this choice made my accomplishments difficult to communicate within the framework that my family used to evaluate professional success. As dessert was served, the conversation turned toward plans for the upcoming year and professional goals that family members hoped to achieve. The tradition of sharing aspirational updates had always created pressure to present optimistic projections about career development and financial prospects. When the conversational opportunity reached me, I offered the diplomatic response I had developed for these situations. "I'm focusing on building sustainable solutions for complex operational challenges," I said with the deliberately vague phrasing that avoided specific claims while suggesting forward momentum. The response satisfied the requirements of family conversation while remaining technically accurate. Nobody pressed for additional details, perhaps recognizing that unemployment was a sensitive topic that was best addressed with supportive generalities, rather than specific inquiries that might create discomfort. As the evening moved toward its conclusion, I reflected on the peculiar situation that had developed around my professional identity within our family context. The people who knew me best and cared about me most had formed perceptions about my capabilities and achievements that were fundamentally disconnected from the reality of what I had actually accomplished over the past 18 months. The disconnect was not the result of deception or miscommunication, but rather the natural consequence of building success in ways that operated outside conventional frameworks for measuring and discussing professional achievement. The challenge was not simply correcting misperceptions, but bridging fundamentally different approaches to understanding what constitutes business success. The evening at Grandview Country Club concluded with the familiar rituals of holiday farewells and promises to maintain better communication throughout the coming year. As I prepared to leave, I carried with me the strange sensation of having participated in conversations about my own field of expertise, while being perceived as someone who needed guidance and support to identify potential career opportunities. The contrast between perception and reality had become so pronounced that resolving it would require more than simple clarification. It would require a complete reframing of how my family understood both my capabilities and my achievements. A transformation that could only occur through circumstances that would make the invisible visible and the unrecognized undeniable. As I drove home through the quiet streets, lined with houses decorated for Christmas, I reflected on the irony that tomorrow would bring communications from clients whose operations I had transformed, revenue reports that would document another record month, and strategic planning sessions for expansion initiatives that would significantly increase my company's market reach and profitability. The successful business owner who my family hoped I might somehow become was already sitting at their dinner table, listening to career advice about her own industry while maintaining the diplomatic silence that family harmony required. The transformation they wished for me had already occurred, though revealing it would require the right moment and the right circumstances to bridge the gap between perception and reality. The night janitor from the original story I had studied had understood something profound about timing and revelation. Sometimes the most powerful transformations are those that occur in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment when the invisible becomes visible and the overlooked becomes undeniable. My moment was coming, though I could not yet predict exactly how it would unfold. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning after Christmas Eve brought the familiar ritual of opening gifts in my childhood home, a Tudor-style residence in the established Oakwood neighborhood where my parents had raised 3 children who were expected to achieve traditional markers of professional success. The living room maintained the same elegant decor that had impressed visitors throughout my youth, with antique furniture arranged around a grand piano that Carmen had played during her brief period of classical music training. As I sat cross-legged on the Persian rug that had witnessed decades of Christmas mornings, I reflected on the complex dynamics that had shaped my family's understanding of achievement and success. The Martinez family had always operated according to clearly defined expectations about education, career progression, and financial accomplishment that reflected 3 generations of steady upward mobility through conventional professional paths. My grandfather had immigrated from Mexico with an 8th-grade education and built a small construction business that provided middle-class stability for his children. My father parlayed that foundation into a degree in civil engineering and a successful career in municipal infrastructure development. The family narrative emphasized education, professional credentials, and steady advancement through established institutions as the pathway to security and respectability. Carmen had followed this template perfectly. Business degree from a prestigious university, entry-level position at a Fortune 500 company, systematic advancement through clearly defined management tracks, and increasing responsibilities that came with corresponding salary increases and benefit packages. Her career progression was measurable, predictable, and comprehensible to everyone who understood traditional corporate structures. My own educational background had initially followed similar patterns. An MBA from Northwestern Kellogg School of Management, concentration in operations and supply chain management, summer internships at consulting firms and multinational corporations. During business school, I had written case studies about supply chain optimization, studied theoretical frameworks for operational efficiency, and completed projects that analyzed complex logistics challenges facing major corporations. The expectation was that this education would lead to a management consulting position or a corporate role in operations management, followed by steady advancement through increasingly senior positions that would eventually culminate in executive responsibility and the financial security that successful careers provide. My academic performance and internship evaluations suggested that this trajectory was not only possible but probable. However, my final semester had included a practicum project that fundamentally altered my understanding of how supply chain management actually operated in practice versus how it was taught in academic settings. I was assigned to work with a mid-sized manufacturing company that was struggling with vendor coordination and inventory management challenges that were costing them approximately $2 million annually in inefficiencies and missed delivery deadlines. The company had previously engaged 2 major consulting firms to address these operational challenges, but the recommended solutions had proved ineffective because they were based on theoretical frameworks that did not account for the specific complexities of their vendor relationship, production scheduling constraints, and customer requirement variations. The academic models assumed standardized processes and predictable variables that did not exist in their actual operational environment. During my 3-month practicum, I spent significant time observing their daily operations, talking directly with warehouse staff, truck drivers, vendor representatives, and customer service personnel who dealt with the practical implications of logistics decisions. I discovered that the real challenges were not the high-level strategic issues that consulting reports had focused on, but rather hundreds of small coordination problems that created cascading inefficiencies throughout their entire supply chain. The breakthrough came when I developed a solution that addressed these micro-level coordination challenges through a combination of technology tools and process modifications that worked with their existing systems rather than requiring expensive infrastructure changes. The approach was pragmatic rather than theoretical, focusing on immediate improvements that could be implemented quickly and measured objectively. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Within 6 months, the company had reduced their logistics costs by 37% while improving delivery reliability and customer satisfaction score. More importantly, the solution was sustainable because it addressed root causes rather than symptoms, and it could be adapted as their business requirements evolved. The success of this practicum project created an unexpected opportunity. The company's CEO, impressed by results that previous consultants had been unable to achieve, asked if I would be interested in developing similar solutions for other businesses in his professional network. He offered to provide introductions and initial project funding in exchange for equity participation in whatever business model I chose to develop. This opportunity forced me to make a decision that would fundamentally alter my career trajectory. I could pursue the traditional path of corporate employment that my family expected, or I could attempt to build a business based on the practical approach to supply chain optimization that had proved successful during my practicum. The choice represented different philosophies about professional development and financial security. The traditional path offered predictability, institutional support, and clear metrics for measuring progress and success. Starting a business offered potential for significant financial returns and professional autonomy, but also substantial risks and uncertainty about future outcomes. Most importantly, it would require me to operate outside the framework that my family used to understand and evaluate professional achievement. After extensive consideration, I chose to pursue the entrepreneurial opportunity. The decision was based on my assessment that the practical approach I had developed could address supply chain challenges that consulting firms and corporate operations teams were not solving effectively. I believed there was significant market demand for solutions that focused on implementation rather than theoretical recommendations. However, explaining this decision to my family proved more challenging than I had anticipated. The concept of starting a logistics consulting business was difficult to communicate in terms that aligned with their understanding of career development and professional success. Unlike a corporate position with a clear title, reporting structure, and salary, entrepreneurship represented uncertainty and risk that conflicted with the stability-focused values that had guided our family's approach to financial security. My parents' initial reaction was supportive but concerned. They appreciated my entrepreneurial ambition, but worried about the financial risks and the absence of traditional employment benefits like health insurance, retirement planning, and predictable income. Their concerns were practical and well-founded, reflecting legitimate considerations about long-term financial security that responsible parents naturally address when their children contemplate risky career decisions. Carmen's response was more complex. As someone who had achieved success through traditional corporate advancement, she found it difficult to understand why I would abandon a proven pathway in favor of an uncertain alternative. Her questions focused on practical considerations about business planning, market analysis, and financial projections that reflected her corporate training, but also revealed skepticism about whether I possessed the experience and resources necessary for successful entrepreneurship. The family conversations about my business plans became increasingly awkward as it became apparent that I could not provide the type of concrete information that would satisfy their concerns about my decision-making process. I could not show them a business plan with detailed financial projections because my approach was based on developing solutions for specific client problems rather than scaling a standardized service offering. I could not describe my target market in conventional terms because I was focusing on operational challenges rather than industry categories. Most problematically, I could not explain my revenue model in ways that made sense within their framework for understanding business success. My approach involved taking equity stakes in some clients, accepting performance-based compensation for others, and developing long-term consulting relationships that generated recurring revenue through ongoing operational improvement. This model was flexible and potentially lucrative, but it did not conform to traditional business structures that my family could easily comprehend. As months passed and I began implementing my business strategy, the gap between my family's understanding of my activities and the reality of what I was accomplishing continued to widen. I was working with multiple clients simultaneously, developing customized solutions for complex operational challenges and generating revenue through various compensation structures that reflected the value I was creating rather than conventional fee arrangements. The work was intellectually demanding and financially rewarding, but it did not produce the visible markers of professional success that my family associated with career advancement. I had no office building, corporate title, or organizational chart that could be easily explained to relatives and family friends who inquired about my professional activity. More challenging was the fact that my clients often preferred to maintain confidentiality about the operational improvements I helped them achieve. Supply chain optimization created competitive advantages that companies did not want to advertise to their competitors, so the success stories that demonstrated my professional accomplishments were not available for sharing in family conversations about career development. The combination of unconventional business structure, confidential client relationships, and complex revenue models created a situation where my professional activities appeared mysterious and potentially unsuccessful to family members who evaluated career progress through traditional metrics. The absence of conventional indicators like salary increases, promotional announcements, and institutional affiliations suggested that my entrepreneurial experiment was not achieving the success that would justify the risks I had undertaken. This perception was reinforced by my lifestyle choices, which emphasized operational flexibility rather than material displays of financial success. I maintained a modest apartment that served primarily as a base for travel to client locations, drove a reliable but unimpressive vehicle that could handle frequent long-distance trips, and dressed in practical clothing that was appropriate for warehouse visits and executive meetings alike. The contrast with Carmen's lifestyle was particularly striking. Her corporate advancement was accompanied by increasingly visible symbols of financial success, including a luxury condominium in a downtown financial district, a premium vehicle with advanced technology features, and a wardrobe that reflected her senior management position. Her success was comprehensible and measurable in terms that everyone could understand and appreciate. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable as the apparent gap between our professional achievements became more pronounced. Carmen's career updates involved promotions, salary increases, and expanding responsibilities that demonstrated clear upward trajectory, while my updates involved vague references to consulting projects and operational improvements that sounded less impressive and less financially rewarding. The situation was complicated by the fact that I genuinely enjoyed the work I was doing and was achieving results that exceeded my initial expectations. My clients were saving millions of dollars through operational improvements, my revenue was growing consistently, and I was developing expertise in supply chain optimization that was rare and valuable in the marketplace. However, these achievements were not visible to my family in ways that would demonstrate professional success according to their established criteria. The perception of my professional struggles was reinforced by my financial behavior, which emphasized reinvestment in business development rather than personal consumption. Rather than spending revenue on lifestyle improvements that would signal financial success, I was investing in technology tools, professional development, and business relationships that would support long-term growth but did not produce immediate visible benefits. This approach created the appearance of financial constraint that suggested my business was not generating significant profits. Family members began to offer assistance with everything from career counseling to financial support, gestures that reflected genuine concern, but also confirmed their perception that my entrepreneurial experiment was failing to provide adequate financial security. The irony was that by many objective measures, my business was significantly more successful than anyone realized. My annual revenue exceeded what I would have earned in most corporate positions. My profit margins were higher than typical consulting firms achieved, and my client relationships were generating opportunities for expansion that could potentially create substantial long-term wealth. However, these achievements were measured against different criteria than my family used to evaluate professional success. The financial performance of my business was strong, but it was not reflected in salary statements, performance reviews, or promotional announcements that could be easily shared and understood in family conversations about career development. The disconnect between perception and reality created an increasingly complex dynamic where I was simultaneously achieving professional success and being perceived as struggling with career development. The foundation of underestimation was not based on actual performance or capability, but rather on the incompatibility between unconventional business success and traditional frameworks for measuring professional achievement. This situation would continue to develop until circumstances would eventually force a revelation that would completely reframe my family's understanding of what I had actually accomplished during the period when they assumed I was struggling to establish a successful career. The foundation of underestimation that had been carefully constructed through months of misperception would ultimately become the platform for a transformation that would surprise everyone involved, including myself. The transformation from business school graduate to operational expert did not occur through traditional channels or conventional learning environments. During the 18 months following my decision to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities, I immersed myself in a comprehensive education that combined practical experience with strategic analysis in ways that no academic program could have provided. My first client engagement established the foundation for everything that would follow. Midwest Manufacturing Solutions, the company where I had completed my practicum project, became the laboratory where I developed methodologies that would eventually scale across multiple industries and operational contexts. Their initial success had generated inquiries from other businesses facing similar supply chain challenges, but each new opportunity required me to adapt my approach to different operational environments and business requirements. The learning process began with systematic observation and documentation. I spent weeks at each client location, arriving before the first shift began and remaining until the last shipments departed, absorbing the rhythms and patterns that determined operational efficiency. Unlike consultants who relied primarily on management interviews and financial data analysis, I positioned myself where the actual work occurred, observing the micro-decisions and informal processes that often determined whether theoretical solutions would succeed or fail in practice. At Thomson Electronics Distribution, a regional parts supplier serving the automotive industry, I discovered that their inventory management challenges stemmed not from inadequate systems or insufficient technology, but from communication gaps between their sales team and warehouse operation. Sales representatives were making delivery commitments without understanding warehouse capacity constraints, while warehouse managers were organizing shipments without visibility into customer priority requirements or market timing pressure. The solution required developing communication protocols that bridged these functional silos, while respecting the expertise and autonomy that each department needed to perform effectively, rather than implementing top-down process changes that might have disrupted existing workflow. I created information sharing mechanisms that allowed sales and warehouse teams to coordinate their activities voluntarily based on shared understanding of operational realities and customer requirements. The implementation took 4 months and reduced their average order fulfillment time from 8 days to 3 days, while improving accuracy rates and customer satisfaction score. More importantly, the improvement was sustainable because it enhanced existing capabilities rather than replacing them with external systems that required ongoing maintenance and support. This experience taught me that effective supply chain optimization required understanding organizational dynamics and human factors as much as technical processes and system capability. The most sophisticated analytical tools and process improvements would fail if they did not account for how people actually work together to accomplish shared objectives under real-world conditions that included time pressures, resource constraints, and competing priorities. My approach evolved to emphasize collaborative problem-solving that engaged frontline employees in developing and implementing solutions, rather than imposing external recommendations that might not reflect operational reality. This methodology proved more effective than traditional consulting approaches, but it also required significantly more time and deeper engagement with client organizations than conventional project structures typically accommodated. At Cascade Food Systems, a specialty distributor serving restaurants and institutional kitchens throughout the Pacific Northwest, I encountered supply chain challenges that were complicated by perishable inventory management, temperature-controlled transportation requirements, and delivery schedules that had to accommodate the operational constraints of food service establishments. Their logistics costs were approximately 40% higher than industry benchmarks, but previous attempts to reduce expenses had compromised service quality in ways that threatened customer relationships. The solution required redesigning their entire distribution network to optimize the trade-offs between cost efficiency and service reliability. This involved analyzing delivery routes, warehouse locations, vehicle capacity utilization, and customer ordering patterns to identify opportunities for improvement that would not sacrifice the responsiveness that their customers required for successful food service operation. The project took 7 months and required coordination with transportation providers, warehouse personnel, customer service representatives, and the restaurant managers, who depended on reliable delivery performance for their own operational success. The complexity exceeded anything I had encountered during business school case studies or theoretical frameworks, but the results validated the time investment through cost reductions that exceeded 30%, while improving delivery reliability and customer satisfaction. More significantly, this engagement taught me to recognize patterns and principles that could be applied across different industries and operational contexts. Supply chain optimization was not simply a matter of implementing best practices or standard solutions, but rather a process of understanding the specific constraints and requirements that shaped each organization's operational environment, then developing customized approaches that worked within those constraints, while achieving measurable improvements in efficiency and effectiveness. The learning accelerated as I began working with multiple clients simultaneously, each presenting different challenges that required me to develop new analytical capabilities and problem-solving methodologies. At Pacific Coastal Logistics, a third-party logistics provider serving e-commerce retailers, I learned to optimize warehouse operations for high-volume, variable demand scenarios where efficiency depended on flexible staffing models and adaptive process flows. At Mountain Ridge Construction Supply, a building materials distributor serving contractors throughout Colorado and Wyoming, I developed expertise in managing inventory for seasonal demand patterns and just-in-time delivery requirements that had to account for weather constraints and project scheduling variability. Each engagement expanded my understanding of how supply chain principles applied differently across various industry contexts and operational environments. The financial rewards grew in parallel with my expanding expertise. Rather than charging conventional consulting fees that were based on time investment, I developed compensation models that tied my earnings to the measurable value I created for clients. This approach aligned my incentives with client success, while enabling me to capture a portion of the financial benefits that resulted from operational improvement. At Thomson Electronics, my compensation included equity participation that reflected the long-term value creation from supply chain optimization. At Cascade Food Systems, I received performance-based payments that increased as cost savings accumulated over time. At Pacific Coastal Logistics, my arrangement included revenue sharing from efficiency improvements that enabled them to expand their service capacity without proportional increases in operational costs. These compensation structures generated income that significantly exceeded what I would have earned in corporate positions, but the revenue streams were irregular and difficult to predict, creating financial management challenges that required careful planning and conservative spending practices. The irregular income flow reinforced my family's perception that my business was struggling financially, even though my annual earnings were growing substantially. The learning process extended beyond technical supply chain management to encompass business development, client relationship management, and strategic planning capabilities that were essential for scaling my operations effectively. Each successful engagement generated referrals and new opportunities, but capitalizing on this growth required developing systems for managing multiple client relationships while maintaining the quality standards that had established my reputation. I invested heavily in technology tools that enabled remote monitoring and analysis of client operations, allowing me to provide ongoing optimization support without requiring continuous on-site presence. These tools included data analytics platforms, communication systems, and project management software, that supported collaborative problem-solving with distributed teams and multiple stakeholder groups. The technology investments were substantial and reduced my short-term profitability, but they enabled me to serve more clients simultaneously while maintaining the depth of engagement that produced superior results. This strategic trade-off between immediate income and long-term capacity building was invisible to my family, who observed reduced personal spending and concluded that my business was not generating adequate financial return. Professional development became a continuous priority, as I recognized that my success depended on staying ahead of industry trends and evolving best practices in supply chain management. I attended specialized conferences, participated in professional associations, and maintained relationships with academic researchers who were developing new analytical tools and methodologies. These investments in knowledge and network development were time-intensive and expensive, but they provided access to cutting-edge approaches and emerging technologies that enabled me to offer capabilities that traditional consulting firms could not match. The competitive advantage was significant, but the cost of maintaining it required sacrificing personal time and financial resources that might otherwise have been used for lifestyle improvements that would have signaled professional success to my family. The most valuable learning came from recognizing patterns that connected apparently unrelated operational challenges across different industries and business contexts. Supply chain optimization was fundamentally about coordination and communication, but the specific mechanisms that enabled effective coordination varied depending on organizational culture, technology infrastructure, market dynamics, and competitive pressure. Developing expertise in pattern recognition and adaptive problem-solving required exposure to diverse operational environments and complex challenges that pushed beyond my existing knowledge and capability. Each new engagement became an opportunity to test and refine methodologies that could be applied more broadly, creating intellectual capital that would support business expansion and increased profitability over time. At Sunrise Medical Equipment, a regional distributor serving hospitals and healthcare facilities, I encountered regulatory compliance requirements and quality control standards that added layers of complexity to conventional supply chain management challenges. The learning curve was steep, but mastering healthcare logistics opened opportunities in a market segment where operational excellence directly affected patient care outcomes and regulatory compliance. At Northwest Renewable Energy Components, a supplier serving solar and wind energy installation, I developed expertise in managing supply chains for emerging technology markets where product specifications were evolving rapidly and supplier relationships required careful management to ensure quality and reliability. This experience provided insights into innovation-driven markets that would become increasingly important as renewable energy adoption accelerated. Each specialized market segment required developing new analytical frameworks and operational approaches, but the underlying principles of coordination, communication, and systematic optimization remained consistent. The learning process was building a portfolio of capabilities that could be combined and adapted to address complex challenges across multiple industries and business contexts. The intellectual satisfaction of solving complex problems and creating measurable value for clients provided motivation that sustained intensive work schedules and continuous learning requirements. Unlike corporate employment, where advancement depended primarily on organizational politics and administrative processes, my success was directly tied to the results I achieved for clients and the expertise I developed through hands-on problem-solving experience. This direct connection between effort and outcome created a powerful feedback loop that accelerated learning and skill development. Every successful engagement validated my methodologies, while revealing new opportunities for improvement and expansion. Every challenge that required developing new capabilities expanded my knowledge base and increased my value to future clients. The learning phase was establishing the foundation for business success that would eventually become undeniable, even to family members who currently perceived my career choices as risky and potentially unsuccessful. The expertise being developed through intensive client engagement and continuous professional development was creating competitive advantages that would support significant business growth and financial success. However, the invisible nature of this learning process meant that the value being created was not apparent to observers who measured professional development through conventional metrics like job titles, salary increases, and organizational advance. The gap between perception and reality would continue to widen until circumstances would eventually force a recognition of what had actually been accomplished during this period of apparent professional uncertainty. The foundation of expertise being established through systematic learning, practical application, would ultimately demonstrate that unconventional career paths could generate superior results for those willing to invest the time and effort required to master complex problem-solving capabilities in high-value market segments where traditional approaches had proved inadequate. The breakthrough in my understanding of supply chain optimization occurred during my 14th month of independent consulting, when I began to recognize that the operational challenges faced by my diverse clients were not isolated problems requiring customized solutions, but rather manifestations of systematic patterns that occurred across industries and organizational structures with remarkable consistency. This recognition emerged gradually through systematic analysis of the documentation I had been maintaining for each client engagement. During quiet evenings in my apartment, I would review project notes, implementation strategies, and outcome measurements, searching for connections that might reveal underlying principles applicable to future challenges. The process resembled archaeological investigation, where individual artifacts gradually revealed evidence of larger civilizations and cultural patterns. The first pattern I identified involved what I termed information asymmetry cascade. Across multiple client organizations, operational inefficiencies consistently resulted from situations where different departments possessed critical information that was not effectively shared with other units that needed that information to make optimal decisions. Sales teams knew customer preferences and timing requirements that warehouse operations needed for efficient fulfillment planning. Procurement departments understood supplier capabilities and constraints that production scheduling teams required for realistic timeline development. At Denver Metro Healthcare Systems, a regional medical equipment distributor, I documented 17 separate instances where departments were making suboptimal decisions because they lacked information that existed elsewhere in the organization but was not systematically shared. Emergency departments were ordering expensive expedited deliveries because they were unaware that standard inventory included items that could meet their requirement. Purchasing managers were negotiating individual supplier contracts without knowledge of volume commitments that other departments had already established with the same vendor. The pattern repeated at Rocky Mountain Agricultural Supply, where regional sales representatives were promising delivery schedules without understanding seasonal capacity constraints that warehouse operations faced during peak planting and harvest period. Production planning teams were establishing manufacturing schedules without visibility into customer payment terms that affected cash flow requirements and supplier payment capability. The solution consistently involved developing communication protocols and information sharing systems that enabled different functional areas to coordinate their activities based on comprehensive understanding of organizational capabilities and constraints. However, implementing these solutions required overcoming institutional resistance to information sharing that often reflected competitive dynamics between departments, concerns about accountability and performance measurement, and simple organizational inertia that favored familiar processes over potentially superior alternatives. The second pattern involved optimization paradoxes, where attempts to maximize efficiency in individual functional areas created inefficiencies when viewed from a systems perspective. Purchasing departments, focused on minimizing unit costs, often selected suppliers whose delivery schedules or quality control requirements created additional expenses for warehouse operations or customer service teams. Transportation managers, who optimized vehicle capacity utilizations, sometimes created delivery schedules that increased inventory holding costs or customer satisfaction problems. At Frontier Construction Materials, the purchasing team had negotiated exceptionally favorable pricing with a cement supplier whose delivery requirements forced the warehouse to maintain expensive overtime staffing during weekends. The cost savings from purchasing were completely offset by increased labor expenses and customer service complications from weekend delivery restrictions, but the organizational structure measured purchasing and warehouse performance independently, preventing recognition of the overall impact. The pattern was pervasive across client organizations, reflecting measurement systems and incentive structures that encouraged functional optimization without considering broader organizational objectives. Sales teams were rewarded for revenue generation without accountability for profitability implications of customer commitments. Operations managers were evaluated on cost control metrics without consideration of customer satisfaction or revenue impact of service decisions. Addressing these optimization paradoxes required developing integrated performance measurement systems that aligned individual functional objectives with overall organizational success. This involved redesigning accountability structures and compensation systems, changes that extended far beyond traditional supply chain management into organizational development and strategic planning domain. The third pattern centered on capacity illusions, where organizations consistently overestimated their operational capabilities because they measured capacity under ideal conditions rather than realistic scenarios that included typical disruptions, variability, and resource constraints. Warehouse operations calculated throughput capacity based on optimal staffing and equipment availability, without accounting for employee absences, equipment maintenance requirements, or seasonal demand fluctuation. At Pacific Northwest Logistics Hub, management believed their facility could process 1,200 shipments per day based on engineering studies conducted under controlled conditions. However, actual operational data revealed that they rarely exceeded 800 shipments because of factors that the engineering analysis had not considered, including customer requirement variations, documentation processing delays, and coordination requirements with transportation providers. The capacity illusions created systematic overcommitment to customers, resulting in service failures, emergency corrective actions, and increased operational costs from expedited processing and overtime staffing. More problematically, these capacity miscalculations prevented accurate financial planning and strategic decision-making about expansion requirements and market opportunity. Resolving capacity illusions required developing realistic operational models that incorporated variability and uncertainty into capacity planning processes. This involved statistical analysis of operational performance data, scenario planning for various demand conditions, and buffer management strategies that ensured reliable service delivery while maintaining cost efficiency. The fourth pattern involved coordination friction, where organizational structures and communication systems created resistance to efficient coordination between functional areas, suppliers, and customers. Complex approval processes, multiple reporting relationships, and unclear decision-making authority prevented rapid response to operational challenges and market opportunities. At Mountain States Equipment Rent, coordination friction manifested through approval requirements that forced field operations managers to obtain authorization from regional managers for routine maintenance decisions, creating delays that often resulted in equipment failures and customer service problems. The authorization process was designed to control costs, but the delays actually increased expenses through emergency repairs and customer compensation requirements. The coordination friction pattern was particularly pronounced in organizations that had grown through acquisition or merger activities, where legacy systems and cultural differences created barriers to integrated operation. Different divisions used incompatible information systems, followed conflicting policies and procedures, and maintained separate supplier relationships that prevented economies of scale and coordinated strategic planning. Addressing coordination friction required streamlining decision-making processes, clarifying authority relationships, and implementing technology solutions that enabled seamless information sharing and collaborative planning across organizational boundaries. These changes often required senior management commitment and cultural transformation initiatives that extended beyond operational improvements into fundamental organizational redesign. The recognition of these systematic patterns transformed my approach to client engagement and solution development. Rather than treating each organization as a unique case requiring customized analysis, I could rapidly identify which patterns were creating operational inefficiencies and focus diagnostic efforts on the specific manifestations of those patterns within each client's particular context. This pattern-based approach dramatically improved the efficiency and effectiveness of my consulting process. Initial assessments that previously required months of observation and analysis could be completed in weeks. Solution development became more systematic because I could adapt proven methodologies rather than creating entirely novel approaches for each engagement. The improved efficiency enabled me to serve more clients simultaneously while maintaining the depth of analysis and customization that produced superior results. My capacity utilization increased significantly, allowing me to accept additional engagements and expand my market reach without proportional increases in time investment or resource requirement. The pattern recognition also revealed market opportunities that were not apparent when focusing on individual client challenges. Organizations across multiple industries were struggling with similar fundamental issues related to information sharing, performance measurement, capacity planning, and coordination process. These widespread challenges suggested demand for systematic solutions that could address root causes rather than symptoms. I began developing standardized diagnostic tools and implementation frameworks that could be applied across different industries and organizational contexts while maintaining the customization necessary for effective results. These tools included assessment methodologies for identifying specific pattern manifestations, implementation templates for solution development, and measurement systems for tracking improvement outcomes. The standardization enabled economies of scale in solution development while preserving the flexibility required for diverse operational environments. Clients benefited from proven methodologies that reduced implementation risk and accelerated results achievement, while I benefited from increased efficiency and scalability that supported business growth and profitability expansion. At Intermountain Food Distribution, application of pattern-based diagnostic tools revealed that all four systematic patterns were contributing to operational inefficiencies that were costing approximately $2. Information asymmetry between sales and warehouse operations was creating customer service problems and expedited shipping expenses. Optimization paradoxes in purchasing and transportation were generating cost savings in individual departments while increasing overall organizational expenses. Capacity illusions in warehouse operations were leading to overcommitment and service failures during peak demand periods. Coordination friction between different product divisions was preventing integrated planning and causing duplicated efforts and missed optimization opportunities. The comprehensive solution addressed all four patterns simultaneously through integrated changes to information systems, performance measurement structures, capacity planning processes, and organizational coordination mechanisms. The implementation required 8 months and generated measurable improvements that exceeded initial projections while establishing sustainable processes for ongoing optimization. The success at Intermountain Food Distribution validated the pattern-based approach and demonstrated its potential for creating significant value across diverse operational environments. The methodology was proving effective for organizations of different sizes, industries, and complexity levels, suggesting broad market applicability and substantial growth opportunity. The financial results from pattern-based engagements consistently exceeded those from earlier customized approaches. Clients achieved greater operational improvements in shorter timeframes, leading to higher compensation levels and stronger referral generation. My annual revenue increased by approximately 60% during the 6-month period following implementation of pattern-based methodologies. The professional satisfaction was equally significant. The intellectual challenge of identifying and addressing systematic patterns provided continuous learning opportunities and creative problem-solving experiences that maintained engagement and motivation despite intensive work schedules. Each successful pattern application validated the analytical framework while revealing additional refinement opportunities and expansion possibilities. The pattern recognition phase was establishing the foundation for business expansion that would eventually make my success undeniable to family members who currently perceived my career choices as risky experiments with uncertain outcomes. The systematic approach to supply chain optimization was creating competitive advantages that would support significant growth and market leadership in specialized consulting services. However, the technical nature of pattern-based supply chain optimization made it difficult to communicate the significance of these developments to family members who lacked background knowledge in operations management and organizational analysis. The success I was achieving operated in domains that were invisible to conventional measures of professional accomplishment, creating continued perception gaps that would persist until circumstances forced recognition of actual achievement. The expertise being developed through pattern recognition and systematic solution development was positioning me for opportunities that would eventually transform the logistics industry while generating substantial personal wealth and professional recognition. The foundation was being established for breakthrough success that would surprise everyone who currently underestimated my capabilities and achievement. The convergence of market disruptions and operational failures that would ultimately create the perfect conditions for my professional emergence began in early September, approximately 4 months before the Christmas Eve dinner that would transform my family's perception of my achievement. The crisis developed through a series of interconnected events that exposed the fragility of supply chain systems across multiple industries and revealed the inadequacy of conventional approaches to managing complex operational challenges. The initial catalyst emerged from global shipping disruptions that created cascading effects throughout North American distribution networks. Container shipping delays from Asian manufacturing centers forced retailers and distributors to implement emergency sourcing strategies that stressed domestic supply chains beyond their designed capacity. Companies that had optimized their operations for predictable international logistics suddenly found themselves competing for limited domestic transportation and warehousing resources. These disruptions revealed systematic vulnerabilities that my pattern-based analysis had identified but that most organizations had not addressed because the problems were not apparent during normal operating conditions. Information asymmetry cascades became critical when companies needed rapid coordination between purchasing, operations, and customer service teams to manage supply shortages and delivery delays. Optimization paradoxes that created minor inefficiencies during stable periods generated major operational failures when system capacity was constrained. At Meridian Global Solutions, where my sister Carmen held her senior management position, the supply chain disruptions created operational challenges that threatened their ability to serve major clients and maintain their competitive position in financial technology services. The company provided software platforms and analytical tools to institutional investors, hedge funds, and corporate treasury departments, services that required reliable access to real-time market data and computational resources that depended on complex technology supply chains. The immediate challenge involved hardware procurement and data center capacity management. Meridian's technology infrastructure required specialized servers and networking equipment that were suddenly subject to extended delivery delays and dramatically increased costs due to global semiconductor shortages and shipping disruptions. The company had contracts with major clients that included stringent uptime requirements and performance guarantees that could not be met if their technology infrastructure was compromised. Carmen's role as Senior Vice President of Operations positioned her at the center of crisis management efforts that required coordinating technology procurement, data center operations, client communication, and financial planning under conditions of unprecedented uncertainty and resource constraint. The challenges exceeded anything that conventional operational management training had prepared her to address, and the stakes included potential client defections that could threaten the company's market position and financial stability. The crisis was compounded by the limitations of Meridian's existing operational approaches, which reflected the same systematic patterns that I had identified across multiple client organizations. The company's purchasing team was optimizing individual procurement decisions without comprehensive understanding of how those decisions affected overall system reliability and performance. Technology operations were measured on cost control metrics that incentivized efficiency during normal conditions but prevented the flexibility needed to respond effectively to supply chain disruption. Information asymmetry between different functional areas prevented coordinated response to the emerging challenge. The procurement team understood supplier constraints and alternative sourcing options but lacked visibility into the technical requirements and performance implications that would determine whether alternative solutions funds would be adequate for client service commitment. Technology operations, new system architecture and performance requirements, but did not have access to procurement intelligence about supplier capabilities and delivery timeline. The coordination friction that existed between Meridian's various operational departments became critical when rapid decision-making and flexible resource allocation were essential for crisis management. Complex approval processes and unclear authority relationships prevented the agile response that the situation required, creating delays that increased both operational costs and client satisfaction risk. Similar patterns emerged across my existing client base as supply chain disruptions exposed operational vulnerabilities that had been hidden during stable market conditions. Companies that had appeared operationally efficient suddenly experienced service failures, cost overruns, and customer satisfaction problems that threatened their competitive positions and financial performance. At Rocky Mountain Agricultural Supply, the crisis manifested through inability to maintain adequate inventory levels of essential farming inputs during critical planting season. Global fertilizer shortages and transportation delays created emergency procurement requirements that stressed their distribution network beyond capacity, while demanding coordination capabilities that their existing organizational structure could not provide effectively. At Pacific Northwest Logistics Hub, container shipping delays forced dramatic changes to their warehouse operations and transportation scheduling that revealed capacity illusions and coordination deficiencies that had been manageable during normal operating conditions but became critical. System flexibility was essential for client service delivery. The widespread nature of these operational challenges created unprecedented demand for supply chain expertise that could address systematic problems rather than providing temporary solutions to immediate symptoms. Companies that had previously managed supply chain operations through internal resources and conventional consulting services suddenly required specialized capabilities that could rapidly diagnose complex problems and implement comprehensive solutions under crisis conditions. The market opportunity was significant but time-sensitive. Organizations facing supply chain crises needed immediate expert intervention to prevent customer defections, financial losses, and competitive disadvantage that could have long-term strategic implications. Conventional consulting firms were overwhelmed by demand and constrained by standardized methodologies that were not well suited to crisis management and rapid solution implementation. My pattern-based approach to supply chain optimization provided unique advantages for addressing these crisis conditions. The diagnostic frameworks I had developed could rapidly identify which systematic patterns were contributing to operational failures, enabling focused intervention strategies that addressed root causes rather than symptoms. The solution methodologies I had tested across multiple industries could be adapted quickly to diverse operational environments and crisis conditions. More importantly, my compensation models aligned my incentives with client success rather than time investment, enabling rapid deployment and intensive engagement without the budget approval delays that conventional consulting arrangements typically require. Clients facing operational crises could authorize immediate intervention based on performance outcomes rather than detailed project scoping and cost estimation processes that might require weeks or months to complete. The combination of specialized expertise, proven methodologies, and flexible engagement models positioned me to capture significant market opportunities during a period when supply chain capabilities were critical for organizational survival and competitive advantage. The crisis was creating demand for exactly the services I had developed during the previous 18 months of intensive client engagement and methodology refinement. However, capitalizing on these opportunities required business expansion capabilities that exceeded my existing operational capacity. The demand for crisis intervention services was immediate and intensive, requiring simultaneous engagement with multiple clients under time pressures that conventional project management approaches could not accommodate effectively. I began developing partnerships with specialized technology providers and independent contractors who could support expanded service delivery while maintaining the quality standards and methodological consistency that had established my competitive advantage. These partnerships required careful coordination and substantial financial investment, but they enabled me to respond to market demand without compromising service quality or client outcome. The expansion strategy involved establishing regional service centers that could provide local presence for client engagement while maintaining centralized coordination for methodology development and quality assurance. This approach enabled rapid scalability while preserving the customization and deep client engagement that produced superior results compared to standardized consulting approaches. At the same time, I was developing technology platforms that could support remote monitoring and analysis of client operations, enabling continuous optimization support without requiring permanent on-site presence. These platforms integrated data analytics, communication systems, and collaborative planning tools that allowed distributed teams to coordinate complex projects and share expertise across multiple client engagements simultaneously. The technology investments were substantial and required significant capital commitment, but they enabled economies of scale that would support profitable growth while maintaining competitive advantages based on specialized expertise and innovative service delivery methods. The platforms also created intellectual property assets that would provide long-term value and potential licensing opportunities beyond direct client services. The business expansion was generating results that exceeded my initial projections while validating the strategic approach I had developed for specialized supply chain consult. Annual revenue was approaching levels that would require formal corporate structure and professional management systems, transitions that would make my business success visible to external observers, including family members who currently perceived my career status as uncertain. The crisis conditions were also creating opportunities for strategic partnerships and acquisition discussions with larger organizations that recognized the value of specialized supply chain expertise but lacked the internal capabilities to develop similar services independently. Several regional consulting firms and technology companies had initiated conversations about potential collaboration arrangements that could provide access to broader markets and additional resources for business expansion. At Meridian Global Solutions, the operational challenges were reaching levels that threatened client relationships and required external intervention beyond the capabilities of their internal teams and existing vendor relationships. Carmen was leading efforts to identify specialized consulting resources that could address their supply chain vulnerabilities and implement sustainable solutions for managing technology procurement and operations under volatile market conditions. The irony of the situation was becoming increasingly apparent as my sister searched for exactly the type of expertise I had been developing while remaining unaware that her own family included someone who possessed those capabilities and could address the challenges her company was facing. The crisis that was threatening Meridian's operations was creating the perfect opportunity for demonstrating the value of my specialized knowledge and proven methodology. The convergence of market disruptions, operational failures, and demand for specialized expertise was establishing conditions that would eventually force recognition of my professional achievements and business success. The crisis was creating circumstances where my family's perception of my career status would inevitably collide with the reality of what I had accomplished during the period when they assumed I was struggling to establish professional credibility and financial security. The foundation was being established for a revelation that would transform not only my family's understanding of my capabilities but also their appreciation for the strategic value of unconventional career paths and the competitive advantages that could result from patient preparation and systematic expertise development in emerging market segments. The transition from observing market crisis to actively intervening in critical operational failures marked a pivotal moment in my professional development and business expansion. During the third week of September, 3 separate client emergencies converged to create a testing ground for the methodologies I had developed and the business capabilities I had been building throughout the previous 18 months of intensive learning and pattern recognition. The first emergency call came from Janet Morrison, Chief Operating Officer at Intermountain Food Distribution, at 6:47 a.m. Their primary distribution center in Salt Lake City had experienced a catastrophic system failure that compromised temperature-controlled storage for approximately $4 million worth of perishable inventory. The failure occurred during a critical pre-winter stocking period when restaurants and institutional kitchens throughout the Mountain West region were building inventory reserves for the holiday season. The technical failure was compounded by the operational challenges that supply chain disruptions had created throughout their distribution network. Alternative storage facilities were operating at maximum capacity due to increased demand from other distributors facing similar supply chain pressure. Transportation resources for emergency product redistribution were severely constrained because carriers were prioritizing contracts with premium pricing that reflected the scarcity of available capacity. More critically, the coordination requirements for managing this emergency exceeded the capabilities of Intermountain's existing organizational structure. Rapid decision-making about product priorities, alternative storage arrangements, customer communication, and financial implications required collaboration between operations, sales, finance, and customer service teams under time pressures that their normal coordination processes could not accommodate effectively. Janet's call reflected the desperation of experienced operational leadership confronting challenges that exceeded conventional management capability. Alexandra, we need someone who can see the entire system and coordinate solutions that our departmental teams cannot develop independently, she explained with the directness that crisis conditions demand. Everything we know about managing this business assumes stable conditions that no longer exist. The request represented an opportunity to demonstrate the value of pattern-based supply chain optimization under crisis conditions that would either validate my methodologies or reveal their limitations. The stakes included not only Intermountain's immediate operational survival but also my credibility for handling similar emergencies that other clients might face as supply chain disruptions continued to escalate. I arrived at their Salt Lake City facility within 4 hours of Janet's call, bringing portable technology systems that enabled rapid data analysis and communication coordination. The first priority involved assessing the scope of the crisis and identifying which systematic patterns were contributing to their inability to respond effectively using existing organizational capability. The diagnostic process revealed that all 4 patterns I had identified were creating cascading failures that transformed a significant but manageable technical problem into an operational crisis that threatened customer relationships and financial stability. Information asymmetry between operations and sales teams prevented coordinated customer communications about product availability and delivery alternatives. Optimization paradoxes in their emergency response procedures created conflicts between minimizing immediate losses and maintaining long-term customer satisfaction. Capacity illusions had led to overcommitment of alternative storage and transportation resources that could not accommodate the emergency redistribution requirement. Coordination friction between different functional areas prevented rapid decision-making about resource allocation and customer priority management that the crisis situation demanded. The solution required implementing emergency coordination protocols that enabled cross-functional teams to share critical information and make rapid decisions based on comprehensive understanding of customer requirements, operational constraints, and financial implications. This involved establishing temporary communication systems and decision-making authorities that bypassed normal organizational hierarchies while maintaining accountability for results and resource utilization. The emergency response strategy prioritized customer relationships that provided the highest long-term value while minimizing immediate financial losses through strategic product allocation and alternative sourcing arrangement. Critical customers received priority access to available inventory and expedited delivery services, while other accounts were offered alternative products or adjusted delivery schedules that maintained service relationships despite the operational disruption. The implementation required coordinating with 17 different suppliers, 8 transportation providers, and 43 major customers, while managing complex logistics for redistributing temperature-sensitive products across multiple storage facilities. The coordination challenge exceeded anything that conventional project management approaches could handle effectively, requiring real-time adaptation and continuous optimization as conditions changed throughout the emergency response period. The results exceeded everyone's expectations, including my own. Within 72 hours, Intermountain had successfully redistributed 96% of their threatened inventory while maintaining service commitments to all priority customers and minimizing financial losses to approximately 12% of the original exposure. More importantly, the emergency response had strengthened customer relationships by demonstrating exceptional service capabilities under crisis conditions. The second emergency emerged while I was still managing the Intermountain crisis. Sarah Chen, Director of Operations at Mountain States Medical Equipment, contacted me regarding supply chain failures that were threatening their ability to provide critical equipment to hospitals throughout Colorado and Wyoming. Global semiconductor shortages had disrupted manufacturing of diagnostic equipment and patient monitoring systems that were essential for hospital operations, particularly as healthcare facilities prepared for potential capacity increases during the approaching flu season. The challenge involved more than simple procurement difficulties. Healthcare supply chains operated under regulatory requirements and quality control standards that prevented the rapid supplier substitution strategies that other industries could employ during shortage. Alternative sourcing required extensive documentation and approval processes that often exceeded available timeframes for addressing urgent equipment needs. The situation was further complicated by competition among healthcare distributors for limited equipment availability from approved supply. Price premiums for scarce equipment were creating budget pressures for hospital systems while potentially compromising patient care quality if essential equipment was unavailable when needed. Chen's request involved developing procurement and allocation strategies that could ensure adequate equipment availability for critical patient care while managing cost pressures and regulatory compliance requirements that conventional crisis management approaches could not address effectively. We need someone who understands both the technical requirements of medical equipment and the operational realities of healthcare distribution under emergency conditions, she explained during our initial crisis consultation. The pattern analysis revealed that healthcare supply chain challenges differed significantly from conventional distribution problems due to regulatory constraints and patient safety implications that prevented many optimization strategies that other industries could employ. However, the fundamental coordination and information sharing challenges remained consistent with patterns I had identified across other sectors. The solution involved developing collaborative procurement strategies that enabled multiple healthcare distributors to coordinate their purchasing power while sharing critical supply intelligence and allocation resources. This approach required establishing temporary partnerships and information sharing agreements that balanced competitive considerations with collective crisis management needs. The implementation created a regional healthcare equipment allocation network that included 12 major distributors and 47 hospital systems throughout the Mountain West region. The network enabled coordinated procurement that increased purchasing power and supply chain visibility while maintaining fair allocation processes that prioritized patient care requirements over financial consideration. The third emergency call came from David Rodriguez, CEO of Cascade Manufacturing Solutions, whose aerospace component production was threatened by supply chain disruptions that affected both raw materials procurement and finished product delivery to major aircraft manufacturers. The aerospace industry's stringent quality requirements and extensive certification processes created unique supply chain vulnerabilities that prevented rapid adaptation to changing supplier availability and transportation constraints. The immediate crisis involved a critical component shortage that threatened production schedules for commercial aircraft assembly, with potential implications for Cascade's long-term contracts with Boeing and Airbus supply. The financial stakes included not only immediate production losses but also potential contract penalties and competitive disadvantage that could affect a company's market position for years. David's request reflected the sophisticated understanding of supply chain complexity that aerospace industry experience provided. We need comprehensive coordination between suppliers, production, quality control, and customer delivery that accounts for aerospace certification requirements while maintaining schedule commitments that our contracts demand, he explained during our initial discussion. The aerospace supply chain challenge required developing solutions that satisfied regulatory compliance requirements while optimizing operational efficiency under crisis conditions. This involved coordinating with certified suppliers, managing quality control processes, and maintaining documentation standards that federal aviation regulations required while implementing emergency response strategies that conventional aerospace protocols did not accommodate. The solution integrated alternative sourcing strategies with accelerated quality control processes and customer communication protocols that maintained certification compliance while enabling flexible response to changing supply availability and delivery constraints. The implementation required collaboration with the Federal Aviation Administration and major aircraft manufacturers to establish emergency procedures that maintained safety standards while accommodating supply chain disruptions. The successful resolution of 3 simultaneous client emergencies during a 2-week period demonstrated the effectiveness of pattern-based supply chain optimization under crisis conditions while establishing my reputation as someone capable of managing complex operational challenges that conventional consulting approaches could not address. The results provided measurable validation of methodologies I had developed while revealing business opportunities that justified significant expansion of service capabilities. The financial impact was substantial. Emergency consulting services commanded premium pricing that reflected the value of preventing operational failures and competitive disadvantage during crisis conditions. The 3 engagements generated revenue that exceeded my entire previous year's income while establishing relationships that would provide ongoing consulting opportunities as supply chain volatility continued. More importantly, the successful crisis interventions created referral networks and industry recognition that positioned my business for accelerated growth and market expansion. Client executives who had witnessed the effectiveness of pattern-based optimization under emergency conditions became advocates for similar approaches within their professional networks and industry associations. The crisis response work was also generating intellectual property and methodological refinements that would provide competitive advantages for future engagement. Emergency protocols I developed for coordinating cross-functional teams and managing rapid decision-making under uncertainty could be adapted for various industries and operational contexts, creating scalable solutions that would support business expansion beyond individual client service. The success of crisis interventions validated the strategic approach I had developed for building specialized expertise in emerging market segments where conventional solutions proved inadequate. The combination of pattern recognition, collaborative problem-solving, and performance-based compensation was creating sustainable competitive advantages that would support long-term business growth and market leadership. However, the intensive nature of crisis consulting required operational capabilities that exceeded my existing business infrastructure. Managing multiple emergency engagements simultaneously while maintaining quality standards and client satisfaction demanded expanded staffing, enhanced technology systems, and formal project management processes that reflected the scale and complexity of challenges I was addressing. The business expansion requirements included establishing regional service centers, recruiting specialized staff, implementing advanced technology platforms, and developing partnership relationships that could support rapid response capabilities across multiple geographic markets and industry sectors. These investments required substantial capital commitment and organizational development that would transform my consulting practice into a comprehensive supply chain optimization company. The transition from individual consultant to business organization would make my professional achievements visible to external observers, including family members who currently perceived my career status as uncertain. The success I was achieving during crisis conditions was creating business opportunities that would eventually require formal corporate structure and public recognition that would be impossible to dismiss or overlook. The foundation was being established for business success that would ultimately become undeniable to everyone who had underestimated my capabilities and achievements during the period when my unconventional career path had appeared risky and potentially unsuccessful. The crisis interventions were proving that specialized expertise and innovative approaches could create extraordinary value during challenging conditions that revealed the limitations of conventional business practices. The successful resolution of multiple client emergencies during established my reputation within specialized industry networks, while creating unprecedented opportunities for systematic intelligence gathering that would fundamentally expand my understanding of supply chain vulnerabilities across the broader economic landscape. The crisis interventions had demonstrated the effectiveness of my methodologies under extreme conditions, but they had also revealed the interconnected nature of operational challenges that extended far beyond individual client organizations. During the weeks following the emergency engagement, I began receiving inquiries from industry associations, government agencies, and academic institutions that were attempting to understand the systematic nature of supply chain disruptions and develop coordinated responses to prevent similar crises in the future. These inquiries provided access to comprehensive data and analytical resources that would have been impossible to obtain through individual client relationships alone. The Federal Emergency Management Agency contacted me in early October to participate in a task force examining supply chain resilience for critical infrastructure sectors including healthcare, food distribution, and transportation. The task force brought together operational experts from across multiple industries to analyze patterns of vulnerability and develop recommendations for improving crisis response capabilities at both organizational and regional level. My participation in the FEMA task force provided access to classified intelligence about supply chain disruptions affecting national security infrastructure, including detailed analysis of how global shipping delays were impacting defense contractors, medical equipment manufacturer, and energy sector operations. The information revealed that the challenges I had been addressing for individual clients were manifestations of systematic vulnerabilities that threatened economic stability and national preparedness. The intelligence gathering process extended beyond government sources to include participation in industry research initiatives led by major consulting firms and academic institutions. McKinsey & Company invited me to contribute to their global supply chain resilience study, which involved analyzing operational data from over 200 multinational corporations to identify patterns of vulnerability and successful adaptation strategies. The McKinsey research provided unprecedented visibility into how supply chain disruptions were affecting different industry sectors and geographic regions, revealing connections between local operational challenges and global economic trends that individual organizations could not perceive from their limited perspective. The study documented systematic patterns that validated my analytical framework while revealing additional opportunities for developing comprehensive solutions. Harvard Business School engaged me as a subject matter expert for their executive education program, focused on crisis management and operational resilience. The academic engagement required developing case studies based on my client experiences while maintaining confidentiality requirements, creating opportunities to refine my analytical frameworks through academic rigor and peer review process. The Harvard collaboration provided access to cutting-edge research in organizational behavior, strategic management, and operations research that enhanced my understanding of why conventional approaches to supply chain management were failing under current market conditions. The academic perspective revealed theoretical foundations for the practical patterns I had identified through client engagement, creating intellectual frameworks that would support more sophisticated solution development. The intelligence gathering extended to participation in industry conferences and professional associations where supply chain executives were sharing experiences and developing collaborative approaches to common challenges. The Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals invited me to present findings from my crisis intervention work at their annual conference, providing access to senior executives from major corporations who were facing similar operational challenges. The conference presentations created networking opportunities with supply chain leaders from Fortune 500 companies who were seeking specialized expertise to address vulnerabilities that internal teams and conventional consulting resources could not resolve effectively. These connections revealed the scope of market demand for pattern-based optimization services, while providing intelligence about specific challenges that could inform solution development and business expansion strategy. The most valuable intelligence emerged from systematic analysis of operational data that clients were sharing as part of ongoing consulting relationships. The crisis interventions had established trust relationships that enabled deeper access to internal systems and processes, providing unprecedented visibility into how supply chain challenges were affecting day-to-day operations across multiple industries. At Intermountain Food Distribution, ongoing monitoring of their operations revealed seasonal patterns of vulnerability that conventional planning processes had not anticipated. Temperature-controlled distribution networks experienced systematic stress during summer heat waves and winter storms that created predictable but unaddressed capacity constraints. The seasonal analysis revealed optimization opportunities that could improve year-round operational efficiency while building resilience for weather-related disruption. The seasonal vulnerability patterns were consistent across other food distribution clients, suggesting industry-wide opportunities for developing specialized solutions that addressed climate-related supply chain challenges. The intelligence revealed market segments where conventional consulting approaches were inadequate because they did not account for environmental factors that significantly affected operational performance. At Mountain States Medical Equipment, detailed analysis of procurement patterns revealed systematic inefficiencies in healthcare supply chains that resulted from regulatory requirements and institutional purchasing practices that prioritized compliance over operational optimization. Healthcare organizations were paying premium prices for routine equipment while maintaining excess inventory levels that tied up capital without improving patient care outcomes. The healthcare supply chain intelligence revealed opportunities for developing specialized services that could optimize procurement and inventory management while maintaining regulatory compliance and quality standards that conventional optimization approaches often compromise. The market opportunity was substantial because healthcare cost pressures were creating demand for efficiency improvements that existing vendors could not provide effectively. The intelligence gathering also included systematic monitoring of competitor activities and market trends that could affect future business opportunities. Traditional consulting firms were struggling to adapt their standardized methodologies to crisis conditions, creating market opportunities for specialized approaches that could address complex challenges more effectively. Major consulting firms including Deloitte, Accenture, and PwC were experiencing client satisfaction problems because their project-based methodologies were not well suited to ongoing crisis management and rapid adaptation requirements that current market conditions demand. The intelligence revealed competitive vulnerabilities that could be exploited through superior service delivery and more flexible engagement models. The systematic intelligence gathering was revealing comprehensive patterns that extended beyond operational challenges to encompass strategic opportunities for business expansion and market leadership. The crisis conditions that were creating challenges for existing market participants were also creating demand for innovative solutions that could address root causes rather than symptoms. Regional economic development agencies were seeking specialized expertise to help local businesses adapt to supply chain disruptions that threatened competitive viability and employment stability. State governments were implementing support programs for small and medium-sized businesses that needed operational consulting but could not afford traditional consulting services. The government support programs created opportunities for developing scalable solutions that could serve multiple clients simultaneously while maintaining cost effectiveness that conventional consulting approaches could not achieve. The intelligence revealed market segments where pattern-based optimization could create significant value while supporting regional economic development objectives. International trade organizations were documenting how supply chain disruptions were affecting global commerce patterns and creating opportunities for regional suppliers to capture market share from traditional international sources. The trade intelligence revealed strategic opportunities for helping domestic manufacturers expand into markets that global disruptions had made accessible. The comprehensive intelligence gathering was establishing the foundation for business expansion that would position my company as a market leader in specialized supply chain optimization services. The systematic analysis of market conditions, competitor limitations, and client requirements was revealing opportunities for developing integrated solutions that could address multiple challenges simultaneously while creating sustainable competitive advantage. The intelligence was also revealing the interconnected nature of supply chain challenges that created opportunities for comprehensive consulting services that could address operational efficiency, crisis management, strategic planning, and business development through coordinated approaches that conventional consulting firms could not provide effective. The most significant intelligence concerned the systematic nature of organizational vulnerabilities that were creating widespread demand for fundamental changes to supply chain management approaches. Companies across multiple industries were recognizing that conventional optimization strategies were inadequate for current market conditions, creating unprecedented opportunities for demonstrating the value of pattern-based solutions. The intelligence gathering phase was establishing comprehensive market understanding that would support strategic positioning for business opportunities that could transform my consulting practice into a major player in specialized supply chain services. The systematic analysis of industry challenges, market demands, and competitive landscapes was revealing pathways for growth that could generate substantial revenue while establishing market leadership in emerging service categories. The foundation was being established for business expansion that would eventually make my professional achievements visible to family members and industry observers who had underestimated my capabilities and potential for creating significant value in specialized market segments that conventional approaches could not serve effectively. The intelligence gathering was positioning me to capitalize on market opportunities that would ultimately validate the strategic approach I had developed for building expertise in emerging market segments where patient preparation and systematic analysis could create extraordinary competitive advantages and financial success. The expansion from individual consulting practice to comprehensive supply chain optimization firm required developing strategic partnerships and professional relationships that could support the scale and complexity of opportunities emerging from my intelligence gathering activity. During October and early November, I systematically built a network of specialized professionals and technology partners who shared my commitment to delivering exceptional results while maintaining the flexibility and innovation that conventional consulting firms could not provide. The foundation of this network emerged from the crisis intervention work that had demonstrated the value of collaborative problem-solving approaches. The emergency engagements had required coordination with transportation providers, technology specialists, and industry experts who understood the practical challenges of implementing solutions under extreme time pressures and resource constraints. These relationships had proved that superior results could be achieved through partnerships that combined complementary expertise rather than attempting to develop all necessary capabilities internally. Michael Chen, a former MIT professor who specialized in operations research and supply chain modeling, became the first formal addition to my expanding organization. Michael had left academic research to pursue applied consulting after recognizing that theoretical frameworks developed in university settings often failed to address the complexity and variability that characterized real-world operational environments. His expertise in mathematical optimization and statistical analysis provided analytical capabilities that enhanced my pattern-based approaches while maintaining the practical focus that had proven essential for successful implementation. Michael's academic background and research credentials provided credibility with corporate executives who valued theoretical sophistication, while his practical consulting experience ensured that analytical frameworks would translate effectively into operational improvement. The combination of academic rigor and practical application created competitive advantages that neither traditional consulting firms nor specialized boutique practices could match consistently. The partnership with Michael enabled development of proprietary analytical tools that could rapidly diagnose supply chain vulnerabilities and quantify the potential value of optimization intervention. These tools integrated pattern recognition algorithms with statistical modeling capabilities that could analyze complex operational data and identify improvement opportunities that conventional assessment methods often miss. The analytical capabilities provided objective validation for recommendations while enabling precise measurement of implementation results. Sarah Rodriguez joined the organization as Director of Technology Integration, bringing extensive experience in enterprise software implementation and systems integration from her previous role at Oracle Corporation. Sarah's expertise addressed the technology infrastructure requirements that were becoming critical for managing multiple client engagements while maintaining the real-time monitoring and optimization capabilities that distinguished our approach from conventional consulting services. Sarah's corporate technology background provided understanding of enterprise architecture and integration challenges that enabled our solutions to work effectively within existing client technology environments, rather than requiring expensive infrastructure replacements that often prevented implementation of otherwise valuable optimization strategies. Her ability to navigate complex corporate technology environments while implementing innovative solutions created competitive advantages that purely technical specialists could not provide. The technology platform that Sarah developed integrated data analytics, communication systems, and project management tools into comprehensive solutions that enabled distributed teams to collaborate effectively across multiple client engagements and geographic locations. The platform supported real-time monitoring of operational performance while providing collaborative planning tools that enabled clients to participate actively in optimization initiatives rather than simply receiving recommendations from external consultants. Jennifer Kim, a former McKinsey principal with extensive experience in organizational development and change management, brought expertise in implementing complex organizational transformations that ensured optimization solutions would be sustainable rather than temporary improvements that deteriorated over time without ongoing external support. Jennifer's corporate consulting background provided understanding of organizational dynamics and implementation challenges that were essential for achieving lasting results from supply chain optimization initiatives. Jennifer's experience with large-scale organizational change enabled development of implementation methodologies that addressed both technical optimization and human factors that determined whether improvements would be maintained effectively over time. Her understanding of corporate culture and change resistance helped ensure that optimization solutions would be adopted enthusiastically by client organizations rather than implemented reluctantly and abandoned when external consulting support ended. The combination of analytical expertise, technology capabilities, and organizational development knowledge created comprehensive service delivery capabilities that could address the full spectrum of challenges involved in supply chain optimization while maintaining the specialized focus and innovative approaches that had established our competitive position in the market. Regional partnerships expanded our geographic coverage and local market knowledge while maintaining consistent service quality and methodological approaches across different operational environments. David Thompson, who led a specialized logistics consulting practice in the Southeast region, became our first regional partner, bringing expertise in automotive and aerospace supply chains that complemented our existing capabilities in food distribution and healthcare logistics. David's regional presence provided access to manufacturing clients in the Carolinas and Georgia, who were facing supply chain challenges related to just-in-time production systems and global supplier coordination. His established relationships with regional manufacturers enabled rapid market entry, while his operational expertise ensured that our pattern-based optimization approaches could be adapted effectively to manufacturing environments that differed significantly from the distribution-focused clients where we had initially developed our methodology. The regional partnership model enabled scalable growth while preserving the customization and deep client engagement that had proven essential for achieving superior results. Regional partners provided local presence and industry-specific expertise, while centralized methodology development and quality assurance ensured consistent service delivery and continuous improvement of analytical frameworks and implementation approaches. Technology partnerships provided access to specialized software and analytical tools that enhanced our service capabilities, while avoiding the capital investment and development time that would have been required to create these capabilities internally. Strategic relationships with enterprise software providers, data analytics companies, and specialized technology firms enabled integration of cutting-edge tools into our service delivery while maintaining cost-effectiveness and implementation flexibility. The partnership with advanced analytics solutions provided access to machine learning algorithms and predictive modeling capabilities that enhanced pattern recognition and optimization analysis, while reducing the time required for complex diagnostic assessment. The analytical tools enabled identification of subtle patterns and relationships that manual analysis might miss, while providing quantitative validation for optimization. Collaborative relationships with transportation management system providers enabled integration of optimization solutions with existing client logistics operations without requiring expensive software replacements or extensive system modification. These partnerships provided access to real-time operational data while enabling implementation of optimization strategies through existing operational infrastructure. The supporting network was creating organizational capabilities that exceeded what individual consulting practitioners could provide while maintaining the agility and innovation that distinguished our approach from traditional consulting firms. The combination of specialized expertise, advanced technology tools, and flexible partnership arrangements enabled comprehensive solutions that addressed complex challenges while maintaining cost-effectiveness and rapid implementation capability. Industry advisory relationships provided strategic guidance and market intelligence that informed business development and service expansion decisions, while establishing credibility with potential clients who valued external validation of methodological approaches and service capability. Former supply chain executives from major corporations provided insights into client requirements and decision-making processes while contributing to methodology refinement and service development initiatives. James Morrison, former Chief Operations Officer at Walmart and current board member at several logistics companies, became our senior advisor for retail and consumer goods markets. His experience managing some of the world's most complex supply chain operations provided insights into large-scale optimization challenges, while his current board positions provided access to executive networks and strategic opportunities that would have been difficult to develop independently. The advisory relationships provided strategic guidance for business expansion while establishing market credibility that facilitated client development and partnership opportunities. Advisory board members contributed to service development while providing introductions to potential clients and strategic partners who could accelerate business growth and market penetration. Professional associations and industry organizations provided platforms for thought leadership and market visibility, while creating opportunities for collaborative relationships with other specialized service providers who could complement our capabilities and expand our market reach. Active participation in supply chain management associations, logistics research organizations, and industry conferences established our expertise while creating referral networks and partnership opportunities. The Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals provided access to senior executives and industry researchers while offering opportunities to present findings and methodology developments that established thought leadership and market visibility. Professional recognition through industry awards and speaking opportunities created credibility that facilitated business development, while attracting potential partners and team members who shared our commitment to innovation and excellence. The supporting network was establishing comprehensive capabilities that positioned our organization for significant market expansion while maintaining the specialized focus and innovative approaches that had created our initial competitive advantage. The combination of technical expertise, strategic partnerships, and industry relationships was creating sustainable competitive advantages that would support long-term business growth and market leadership in specialized supply chain optimization services. The network development was also creating intellectual property and methodological assets that provided value beyond direct client services, while establishing barriers to competitive imitation that would protect market position and profitability as the business expanded into broader markets and service categories. The foundation was being established for business transformation that would eventually make our organizational capabilities and market success visible to external observers, including family members who had underestimated the potential for building significant business value through specialized expertise and innovative service delivery approaches in emerging market segments. The systematic preparation for market expansion and organizational transformation during November represented the culmination of strategic planning that had been developing throughout the previous months of client success and network building. The foundation of specialized expertise, proven methodologies, and strategic partnerships had created opportunities that required comprehensive preparation to capitalize effectively while maintaining the quality standards and innovative approaches that had established our competitive position. The preparation phase encompassed multiple dimensions of organizational development, including formal business structure, operational systems, financial management, regulatory compliance, and strategic positioning that would support sustainable growth while preserving the agility and client focus that had generated our initial success. The transition from entrepreneurial consulting practice to comprehensive business organization required systematic attention to infrastructure development and process optimization that would enable scalability without sacrificing service quality. Corporate structure development became the first priority as the complexity and scale of opportunities required formal organizational frameworks that could support multiple client engagements, strategic partnerships, and geographic expansion while providing legal protection and tax optimization that individual practice arrangements could not accommodate effectively. The incorporation process involved establishing Martinez Supply Chain Solutions as a Delaware C corporation with organizational structure that could support future investment, partnership arrangements, and potential acquisition opportunities. The corporate structure included advisory board positions for industry experts who had contributed to our methodology development and business expansion while providing equity participation opportunities for key team members whose expertise and commitment would be essential for achieving our growth objective. The equity structure balanced founder control with stakeholder incentives that aligned individual success with organizational performance and long-term value creation. Legal compliance requirements included establishing comprehensive intellectual property protection for the analytical frameworks and methodological innovations that represented our primary competitive advantages. Patent applications were filed for the pattern recognition algorithms, optimization methodologies that had proven effective across multiple industries, while trademark protection was secured for our service delivery approaches and organizational branding that differentiated our offerings from conventional consulting services. The intellectual property development also included documentation of case studies and implementation frameworks that could support training programs and service standardization while protecting proprietary approaches from competitive imitation. The systematic documentation of successful interventions and methodology refinements created knowledge assets that would support business expansion while establishing barriers to competitive entry that would protect a market position and profitability. Financial management systems were implemented to support the complexity of multiple revenue streams, performance-based compensation arrangements, and partnership distributions that characterized our business model. The financial infrastructure included sophisticated accounting systems that could track project profitability, partnership arrangement, and equity participation while providing real-time visibility into cash flow and resource utilization that would support strategic decision-making and operational optimization. The financial systems also included capital structure optimization that would support expansion requirements while maintaining operational flexibility and founder control that were essential for preserving the innovative culture and client focus that had generated our success. Banking relationships were established with institutions that understood professional services businesses and could provide credit facilities and cash management services that would support growth requirements and seasonal variations in revenue flow.
Investment preparation included developing comprehensive business plans and financial projections that could support potential equity investment or strategic partnership opportunities that might accelerate growth while providing access to larger markets and specialized capabilities that would enhance our competitive position. The investment materials documented our track record of success while articulating the market opportunity and competitive advantages that would support sustainable growth and significant returns for potential investors. Up next,
You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.